Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Football in Focus. We're presented, as always, by 360 Sports and KO Football. I'm Ryan Downey, joined, as usual, by Kevin O'Connell. Kevin, how you doing?
Doing really well, Ryan. Happy Monday to you.
Yes, happy Monday. That's not a
If there is such a thing.
not a typical expression, but I appreciate the sentiment. That's awfully kind of you. You are somewhat of a Nostradamus because you commented on my hair a couple of weeks ago, and then I got sort of some fan mail about the hairdo afterwards, like I was Mel Kiper Jr. This last week, you mentioned that Oakley may not be too pleased with the level of product placement that their shirts and things like that are having. So they sent me a new shirt with a specialized Oakley logo right there on the shoulder so it could be seen throughout the broadcast, a nice little watch, and several other things I can be wearing today.
Well, that's just fantastic. It's good to know that my mentorship and tutelage is paying off for not only you, but the companies that you benefit from your relationships with as well.
Yeah, no, your box of goodies is probably in the mail, so take a look out for that.
I've heard that many, many times from you. I'm still waiting on multiple things there.
Okay, well, it just must be the post office. Those guys aren't super responsible. Crazy weekend in college football. I don't know if we've seen anything like it. I mean, 5 of the top 8 teams lose. Hasn't ever happened in the history of the AP poll. We'll get to that in a second. But your game, Army, had a great win. That was one of the early games on Saturday morning. Tell us a little bit about their game against Ball State.
Yeah, I mean, both teams were 1-3 coming into that one. Kind of a, you look at both of the teams' schedules, and especially the Army. You look at teams like Air Force and Navy, Western Kentucky, teams that are all playing really good football right now, still on the schedule. Rice coming up this week as well. So you start to think to yourself, if they don't start winning and they lose games that they should not have lost, played well enough to win the last 2 weeks prior. So they come home, and the second we got on campus, you just felt that the energy was there, the commitment to playing the type of football that they want to play was there. And I was excited to call the game, and it ended up kind of, despite the weather and kind of sloppy conditions, ended up being a really good football game, and Army played really, really well in all 3 phases. And we're finally able to close out a game. They've had a lead, other than the Stanford game, on the road at Stanford, they've had a lead in the third quarter of every game they've played so far, and we're 1-3. So for them to have that lead, start to look like they were going to give up too much of their cushion and then potentially have to be on the field, which they were at the end to close it out. Defensively, Jeremy Timpf able to get an interception to close out the deal. But top to bottom, it was a really fun game to call. Looking forward to them now at 2-3 hosting Rice this week, and I'll be heading out there for that one. Rice has played one of the toughest schedules maybe of a lot of the mid-major type schools in the country, having to play A&M and Notre Dame already. So it'll be fun to see them come out to West Point. It's always fun to see the visiting team experience that like I got to do the first time about a month ago, and look forward to that game. But you're right, Ryan, college football this weekend. The great thing about having the noon game East Coast is I'm on a plane watching DirecTV by about 6 o'clock and getting to watch a lot of those games, the fourth quarters, the SEC games, as well as the Stanford-Notre Dame game, and then on to the wild stuff we saw late night in the Pac-12. It was pretty impressive, and I know you were at the UCLA game. There's a lot we've got to get to.
Yeah, before we get on to sort of the weekend that was and the carnage that was, question for you. A lot of teams that have the ability to have a fourth quarter lead would love to have sort of the discipline that Army has and the running game has. Historically, they're in the top 5 in least penalized teams in college football. And with that sort of triple option look and a very, very talented running quarterback, you would think they'd be the perfect team to be able to hold leads late. You probably know that team better than anybody outside of that locker room and outside of that university. I don't get how they can lose a late lead at Wake, lose a late lead at Yale, almost lose a late lead this last weekend with kind of that prototypical look that you want out of a team kind of holding on to a lead in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I don't know if you were able to see the open to that game. I know you were kind of traveling around getting ready to go to a couple games, but we really broke that down. We showed plays from offensively against Wake Forest, exactly what you're talking about, driving up 7 in the third quarter at Wake Forest, inside the red zone, run an option play, perfect execution up until the running back drops the pitch, and he probably scores if he catches the pitch. And it ends up being a Wake Forest gets the turnover, goes down, ties the game, and now you're in a dogfight instead of going up 14. And then defensively, it's just a do-your-job thing. They have a good defense. They've got 2 sophomore linebackers who are playing out of their minds right now in Andrew King and Timpf, the other linebacker I mentioned. And then I really think some people are calling me crazy. I think they have one of the better cornerback duos in the country. 2 Bay Area kids, one of which from De La Salle, Josh Jenkins, who I think will be an NFL player at some point, and then Chris Carnegie on the other side, forced a fumble on the first drive of the game, also from the Bay Area. I really think defensively it's just a matter of doing your job and getting back to fundamentals and kind of assignment football. And when you think of Army, a lot of times we talk about the teams they play having to play assignment football against the option or make sure they're good against Army's defense, not turn the ball over, those types of things. But Army was starting to really lose games on what they normally capitalize off of other teams on, which was pretty much self-inflicted wounds, for one. You talked about them always being historically low in penalties. They've been historically high for Army to start the game or start the season this year. So they were able to they didn't have their first penalty, I believe, until the third quarter in that game. So they were able to overcome that. But even in that game, they fumble a punt that they were able to recover. They had 2 fumbles that they were barely ruled down on that very easily could have gone the other way. You know, football, how close those things are. So still, they won the game. They played well at home, and they're really turning Mikey Stadium into a home field advantage for themselves this year. But they still have to clean up some of those plays if they're going to have any sort of a chance against what looks like a great Air Force team, a very, very good Navy team. They played last weekend. Air Force able to win that one. And then Western Kentucky, who I did early on in the season, their quarterback Brandon Dowdy is, I think, second in the country in passing. And their offense, they're scoring 30 or 40 points a game. So Army's got their hands full if they want to try to get to 5 or hopefully maybe 6 wins to be bowl eligible. But coming off the 2 wins they had last year, they've already equaled that total. So Jeff Monken and that staff doing a great job. And last week was huge just because you're 1-3. You lose to Yale, a non-scholarship FCS team. You really wondered what type of team we would see, Ryan, and they answered the bell. And it sounds like they had a great week of practice. And you really you're excited because you see the type of kids they are, and you really want the best for them, and at least to play well. And if they lose, okay, but they played well and won that one.
No, it was definitely great to see. I was glad to see them get the win, and I know how passionate you become about that program, so that's awesome. Craziness of the week started with Thursday. Oregon loses at home to an unranked Arizona team. They hadn't lost at Autzen to an unranked team in, I think, 6 years. The offensive line was almost as bad as they were the week before at Washington State. I think they gave up 7 sacks at Washington State. They gave up 5 sacks against Arizona. One of them being the sack fumble that ended the game on the last drive for Oregon. Now they're getting back probably Jake Fisher, who is probably their best offensive player, not named Marcus Mariota, this weekend for UCLA. So that should shore things up. But without much of a dynamic offense, not running the ball very well, this is an Oregon team that is not very good right now, which is just shocking with what the preseason expectations were.
I was disappointed in that one. It was late. I was already back east at West Point, 10:30 kick time, and I stayed up and watched the whole thing on Thursday night because I really wanted to see how Oregon, once I knew that it was Arizona had shown up and it was going to be a back-and-forth type game. I love watching Marcus Mariota play. I really think he is the best player in college football. I know they lost, and his Heisman hopes will take a significant hit, but he ended up watching a lot of Heisman Trophy contenders lose games this weekend as the weekend went on. So it might have been the best thing for Oregon that they lost on Thursday because by Saturday about midday, people had forgotten about them. But I think with Oregon, I was disappointed in what you just talked about, not only with the offensive line, but the defense. And they were able to beat Michigan State early on in the season, but I think that was Mariota magic more so than the Oregon football team overcoming their shortcomings from the past. When I talk about that, I mean the Stanford games where I know your client Taylor Hart and I have had a lot of conversations with former defensive linemen there about schematics and what they were thinking defensively playing against some of those power teams. And Rich Rod and that Arizona offense, they just absolutely dismantled that defense in the second half. And every time Oregon needed to step up, make a tackle, not even for loss, but make a tackle and give the ball back to their offense in a good situation, defensively they weren't able to do it. And they got pushed around a little bit. And I actually sent out a tweet that I had a little interesting back and forth with some people on, basically saying, hey, I can't tell you how many times I've seen Oregon lose a game on defense, not able to stop the run, not able to stand up, have their front seven, or I mean they run a very unique defense, but their front 3 or 4 D linemen and linebackers not fly around and catch people with their speed, but hit people at the line of scrimmage and make a stop. And I just once again saw them against an Arizona team not historically known for being power football. Watching some of the things that I saw this weekend in college football, especially down in the SEC, I would worry about Marcus Mariota's safety for one if they are able to slip into that college football playoff. And defensively, I mean, good luck. You play against a Mississippi State or an Auburn. I mean, they might have 600 yards of offense against Oregon and sack Mariota 10 times.
Yeah, Oregon's defensive line, they lost Armstead early in the game, and he's 6'8" and just a mountain of a man, and sort of is that. He's a first-round pick this next year without any question. He's the guy that sort of makes that defensive line move. He limped off the field and then headed to the locker room without his shoe on, never to come back. It's an Arizona team that beat them last year down in Tucson, so it's a team that sort of can play them really, really tough. But I think you're right. I think Oregon's defense is predicated on speed. And whenever they have to play a team that wants to run it down their throat, they don't necessarily have the bodies to do that. When they play in space and play on the edge and sort of move sideline to sideline, they're much more effective because that's sort of what they were built to do. They were built to stop their own type of offense. They weren't necessarily built to stop an SEC type of offense or a Stanford or somebody that runs power. Not that Arizona does, but that was how they were effective. You sort of mentioned some of those SEC games. The SEC West is crazy good, and it's crazy competitive, and it's crazy balanced. We may see the winner of the SEC championship game be an SEC West team with 2 losses with how things are going. Alabama loses on the road to Ole Miss. Texas A&M loses on the road to Mississippi State. That conference, you think week in and week out, is just going to be, they're going to beat each other up.
You absolutely do, and I think this is the first year, I'm going to be honest with you, Ryan, that I've really, really broke into the SEC. And because of doing some shows and kind of working for CBS Sports Network now, they have the #1 game in the conference every week on CBS. So it requires all of us to be on the same page as far as learning the conference. And I got to tell you, I've always been, beating the drum for the Pac-12 and the type of football that's played out west. But forget the East and West Coast bias for a minute and just talk about the SEC Western Division like you just did. Excuse me. I really think that it's a time where the Ole Misses and the Mississippi States and the way they've been able to recruit now as a member of the SEC West, they've I don't want to say they've caught up as far as like the overall program levels of an Alabama or some of those other schools, but the parity is just, it's unbelievable. And when you look at the quarterback positions of the teams that really won, I cannot say enough about Dak Prescott at Mississippi State. I don't really think that was an issue of Texas A&M. They didn't play great in the first half, and they did close the game well. But I don't really think it was an issue of them not playing well because of their own problems. I think it's an issue of Mississippi State's a really good football team. And now they're the number, I believe, 3 team in the country now, and they deserve every bit of it because they've got a Heisman Trophy contending quarterback who might be the best dual threat quarterback in the SEC since Cam Newton. Reminds me an awful lot of him. People want to say Tim Tebow, but Dak Prescott throws the ball a heck of a lot better than Tim Tebow ever did and runs a little bit different offense than what Dan Mullen did with Tim Tebow. And then Ole Miss, I expected Ole Miss to lose that game because of their quarterback play. I just thought that their quarterback would turn the ball over. He's historically known for it, and you got to give him a ton of credit for not doing that. And Alabama, obviously, with the late turnover there, that kind of sealed it. As far as the SEC goes, I still think it's going to be a one-loss team that wins the SEC championship, but I do think they're going to get 2 teams into the playoff at this point. Oregon, that loss hurt way more than just the Pac-12. Connor Cook and Michigan State must have been watching that one, thinking to themselves, this can't be happening right now because we lost on that very same field, and they just lost to Arizona on national TV. And all those committee members saw that game and now say, well, Michigan State obviously can't be that good because they lost to a team that Arizona was able to go in and beat. So I think right now, the way it's looking with Oklahoma losing, I think it really is a situation where the only team that can really throw a wrench in the plans, I really do think, is Notre Dame, because they could end up beating Florida State in 2 weeks, and I think that would swing the door wide open for maybe a one-loss Michigan State-type team or a Pac-12 team to potentially slide in as the other team in that playoff. But I think we're headed towards 2 SEC teams, probably from the SEC West, being represented in the college football playoff.
Now, you mentioned TCU. You reminded me off air. You reminded me several times this weekend. That was a game that you called, them upsetting Oklahoma. I don't actually remember that. I've looked in the film. Maybe it was on one of your more well-viewed broadcasts than this web show that we do. But nonetheless, congrats on that pick. TCU was special. They really, really showed me something. I mean, they had 2 undefeated regular seasons in 09 and 10, playing for the Mountain West. They didn't have a seat at the national championship table either of those 2 times. They're new to the Big 12. They finally have their destiny in their own hands. If they win their conference, they're at the table. They're in the playoff. And what do? They play an Oklahoma team that everybody was sort of anointing as the national championship contender when Florida State had some struggles and Alabama didn't look like they've looked in past years. They go out and they handle them. They played great. Now they have Baylor next week at Baylor. That'll be a real test to see if TCU is kind of the real deal. But they held Trevor Knight to 14 for 23, 2 interceptions. One was a pick 6. They're taking advantage of the stage that they're in the Big 12 right now, and it's great to see. I know you've experienced playing them sort of with some Mountain West ties of your own, and so you saw that dominance. But it's just great to see them taking advantage with that step up and play.
Well, I think it just goes to show you what a job Gary Patterson has done there. And he stayed there. He's had multiple opportunities to leave, and TCU's done a phenomenal job of finding the money to pay him to keep him there as one of the top coaches in the country, because he's built a program off toughness. They fly around. They hit people on defense. He's put a ton of people into the NFL off that defense, and he's got a quarterback that's a playmaker now in Boykin, that can hurt you in a variety of different ways, and he's got some playmakers at the receiver position. Special teams, they've always been solid, and I really think that Baylor better bring their hard hats this week, because you're hosting a TCU team in your new stadium, and the lights are going to be on, and everybody's going to be excited, and TCU comes with their blue-collar mentality, and they're going to try to get after Bryce Petty and not let them play their finesse style. And I think it's going to be a great football game. I think Baylor's defense has played really, really well. I think it's those 2 teams. When I think about the SEC or the Big 12 and kind of the demise of the Texas Longhorns, I think of TCU and I think of Baylor as the reasons why. Not necessarily Oklahoma or Oklahoma State. I think of those 2 schools because I see athletes, I see toughness, I see playmakers, I see quarterbacks. And you don't see that all the time at Texas. And historically, they've always kind of been the powerhouse in that state. And I think it just goes to show you how they're a perfect example. If you ever want to know why the struggles are happening in Austin, take a look at what's happening in Fort Worth and what's happening in Waco, because both those coaches have done a phenomenal job. They've stayed in place for a while, built up a great program, and now we're seeing the fruits of that, and we're going to get to see a great football game this weekend in Waco.
Yeah, no, they're certainly getting the athletes that Texas used to get. Oklahoma was always going to get theirs, and Texas got theirs. But the last 5 or 6 years, they haven't gotten them. They've gone elsewhere, and they've gone to Baylor, and they've gone to TCU. So that's great. Probably the most disappointing game for me of sort of the big upsets was UCLA. It was a game I went to. 80,000 fans there. It was a huge crowd for UCLA, near capacity. When Travis Wilson went out early in the game and Kendall Thompson came in as the backup for Utah, it was a dynamic, sort of a more dynamic Oregon-style kind of running system, run and shoot type of system that Utah tried to employ. that UCLA wasn't prepared for. They weren't ready for, and they hadn't schemed against it. They thought they were going to see more of a traditional set with Travis Wilson back there. And that sort of lack of preparation ended up costing them. The defense didn't play well. They played as poorly as they did probably against Memphis earlier in the year. And the offense was anemic. The offensive line gave up 10 sacks. 10 sacks. The two offensive tackles played as poorly as I've seen offensive linemen for a top 25 team play in a decade. It was horrible. They had a field goal late to win it, missed it, in a year where the Hail Mary is sort of the appropriate late game response, with USC losing to Arizona State on a Hail Mary, Cal losing to Arizona on a Hail Mary. That probably would have been the better option for UCLA from the 45-yard line. But it was just another game where we were left disappointed in the product that UCLA put on the field. But I think the shakeup in college football is just going to give the selection committee an absolute headache to deal with in a few months, because I don't know right now what they're going to do. And the indications are it's just going to get more jumbled than it is more clear as we move forward.
First thing I thought about on Saturday when all these upsets started to happen was good luck. I mean, there's no more computers. There's no more formula to blame it on. We're gonna all get to sit back, much like they do when they select the new pope, and the smoke comes out of the stack, and everybody knows that we have a new pope. It's going to be they're going to need to do something like that, because I think they're going to need to deliberate and talk about this one for weeks on end, and I really don't think that it's going to clear up. And Ryan, the more and more I think about it, if it ends up being a 2-loss SEC team that wins that SEC championship game, good luck even more so, because they're probably going to end up would have beat a 1-loss team, or maybe even an undefeated team in the SEC. So it's going to be crazy. The Pac-12, the Hail Mary, Arizona State. I'll tell you what, it must have been fun to be a college football fan in the state of Mississippi, Arizona, and Utah this week, although I don't know if the partying was as significant in Utah as it was in the other two states. But I know we've got a Chris Chester interview that I've been looking forward to. I wasn't able to be a part of it, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing that.
Yeah, before we get to sort of the NFL weekend, I did want to introduce that. Chris was nice enough to chat with us late last week. He's playing tonight. It's going to be his 100th start in the NFL. He's played in 3,680 consecutive snaps without sort of leaving the field, kind of the Iron Man of Iron Man right now. Maybe it's not Cal Ripken Jr.'s streak, but it's impressive nonetheless. They're playing the Seahawks tonight. Chris was kind enough to chat with us last week. I will warn you, he's a great dad. He had his 2 sons and his daughter were home. They were upstairs playing on the computer, so he was downstairs, hunkered down in his basement on his iPhone. And like every good offensive lineman, really doesn't have a sense for how big he is. So his face wasn't necessarily in the screen the entire interview. So if you can bear with that, Chris is a phenomenal guy, and we were happy to have him on this week. Chris, I know it's tough to kind of connect during the week with the game coming up. You guys are playing Seattle on Monday night. It's your 100th career start. And I don't think people outside of the Norman, Oklahoma market where you went to college, or Baltimore Ravens organization, they drafted you in the 2nd round in 2006, or the Washington Redskins organization whom you currently play for, anywhere outside of those markets, I don't think has a true appreciation for what you've meant to your respective teams and the NFL. This is going to be your 52nd consecutive start, 3,300 consecutive plays, and 100th start of your career on Monday. It's phenomenal to have you join us today, and you need to be commended about your sort of Iron Man status in the league right now.
Yeah, I don't think I realized it until earlier when someone told me. You know, it's just you kind of put your head down and get in a routine, and you know, before you know it, it's, you know, you got a couple gray hairs and you're on your 100th start. So it's really a thrill for me.
Whatever routine you're working, stick to it, because it's clearly proving dividends.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been very fortunate, and I've, knock on wood, but I've been able to stay fairly healthy throughout that time.
Now, you guys played on Thursday night. You played the Giants. I know the result wasn't what you guys had hoped for. The NFL is making a huge push to have games on every single Thursday. It's sort of been a new thing the last couple of years. Give the audience Because a lot of the people watching it, a lot of your fans don't necessarily know the rigors that you guys go through each week. How do things change on a Thursday night game, and how difficult is that to get your body ready when everybody knows you're not feeling 100%, nobody is on Thursday?
Yeah, it's pretty tough to make that quick turnaround because on a regular week you don't even really feel good till Sunday if you're lucky. So to turn around and play on Thursday is tough, and I kind of like it. I like it in the sense that after it you get a couple of days off more than usual in the season, which is always a bonus. But the quick turnaround is tough, and I mean you got to pull out all the tricks in the book, to get yourself feeling good with the cold tub and getting a massage and stretching and just whatever therapy you need to do to get your body right. But it is definitely a tough turnaround.
Yeah, just so kind of mixed feelings. Are you a fan of the Thursday games? I know the sort of extended break after a Thursday game is great, but you have to go through that process of playing sort of not 100% beforehand. Are you a fan of the league going to Thursday games every week?
Yeah, it's tough, but for the most part, I'm okay with it. I don't totally hate it.
Don't totally hate it. That's good. You obviously grew up in Southern California, went to Tustin High School, moved on to Norman, Oklahoma, got drafted by the Ravens. Now you're with the Washington Redskins. How are you living without In-N-Out? I mean, it's a daily staple for me. How on earth does that work out for you?
Yeah, each day is a battle, and I fight to get through it. But it kind of makes whenever I do go back, I splurge. Yeah, it's gonna be in my diet at least maybe 4 or 5 times a week. It's just because it's that good.
Good for you.
It's tough, but I survive.
Good. I'm sure.
What really hurts me, what really kills me is Mexican food. It's hard to find good Mexican food out here on the East Coast. That one kind of hurts too.
Yeah, I went to college in Virginia, and I can second that. The folks in Texas think they have a corner on that Tex-Mex market, but unless you're within 50 miles of the border of Mexico, I don't think you have a true appreciation for good Mexican food.
Yeah, it's a new standard,
Yeah, for sure. You obviously played for Coach Shanahan last year. You're playing for Coach Gruden this year. What are some of the differences that you've seen between the two staffs that they've brought in that just are sort of make the daily routine or the routine on Sunday a little bit different? I've really enjoyed both coaches so far. Still kind of growing with Coach Gruden right now. I've had 3 years with Mike Shanahan, and he was a great guy and kind of a little more old school in his mentality, which is probably I guess the only difference between him and Coach Gruden is just their relatability, I guess. Coach Gruden a little bit younger. He tries to get in our walkthroughs, and he's running around a little more in practice and brings a lot of energy, more kind of steady and just more of a I don't know, just kind of just more of an old school approach to coaching. Now, my guess is the guys on the team under Shanahan sort of looked at him as a Super Bowl winning coach. It's sort of a senior mentor out there, where Jay Gruden may be more of a player's coach, getting involved with you guys. Have you really sensed that difference in the personalities?
Yeah, I mean they were both very relatable. Like they had an open door policy in their office. Policy in their office. If you had something on your mind, something on your chest, you want to talk about something, they'd have you go. You'd be no problem to go ahead and meet with them and talk to them. So they were both very accommodating in that sense. But it's just just kind of the generational differences. Mike's a little bit older, and then obviously Jay's a lot younger, and they're both good in that respect, but it's different. Kind of a different approach,
Yeah.
Especially considering Jay played too, in the Arena League. Having that experience, he kind of gets that player's perspective as well.
Sure. No, that makes sense. Now, over the last couple of years, you've protected a couple of different quarterbacks, on and off with Robert Griffin, and then with Cousins. Sort of an outsider's perspective may suggest that as an offensive lineman, Kirk may be a little bit easier to block for, just because you kind of know that he's going to stay relatively close to the pocket, where jury's out on where Robert's going to end up after a couple of seconds back there. Is it truly a different opportunity to block for those guys? Is it as drastically different as it appears on kind of TV and in the stadium, or are they more similar than we think?
I think they're a little more similar than people would, think. They'll both stay back there, and when things are going good, they're both back there getting the ball out on time and making good decisions with the ball, and they're both kind of younger quarterbacks, and so still working towards that, and they will be very successful doing that in their careers. The only thing, Robert will go ahead and make some plays with his legs, and he's obviously one of the better athletes at quarterback, and so fast, even coming off the knee injury. So they're a lot alike, but Robert has that explosiveness to just kind of turn a scramble into like a 20, 30-yard run, like that easy.
You still with us?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, that's better. A little bit of a breakup. Again, for people that don't know you, shame on them. But for people outside the Baltimore and the Washington, D.C. markets, give us an idea of some of the things off the field that you're particularly passionate about. I mean, you're obviously a charismatic guy, and you've played at a tremendous level for a number of years now. But off the field, what are the things that kind of get you fired up?
Yeah, when I get some time away from football, I love doing dad stuff. I have 3 kids, and they're all in sports, and I got a young daughter, she's 2, and she's in dance now, so I'm not maybe as fired up about that as I'm about Little League, but it's still, I love going to football or to Little League games and soccer games and Little League basketball, things like that. I love being able to be a part of that. And that's, I really try to do as much of that kind of stuff, all that dad stuff I can do when I do get some free time.
What's it like going to a Little League baseball game and you've got all the dads supporting their kids, but looking over at you every other pitch, realizing who you are, and they want to be your best friend?
No, I've been pretty fortunate. I had some good teams, and my sons have had some great coaches, and I try to let them get as much of the attention. I try to fall back the best I can and not really be seen if at all possible, and then just let it be about my kids and their stuff.
Good for you. That's awesome. Anything else that your adoring fans need to know about you? I mean, you're an open book clearly here right now with us. Is there anything else that you want to share with folks?
Yeah, and also some other off-the-field things I like to be part of. We have our family, my wife and I, we have a charitable fund, and every year we try to give money and support programs that are involved in a STEM, the science, technology, engineering, mathematics. We try to, that's kind of our altruism in life. Is that's kind of where, at least for me, that's where I really like to hopefully make a positive impact on the world is helping with those kind of programs.
Now, how'd you get involved in that program?
Well, I kind of went back and forth there. A lot of things I felt kind of passionate about, but at the end of the day, I thought that if hopefully in a good way, in a right way, that we can improve math and science and technology, I think it can have a serious impact across the world and help a lot of people and be pretty far-reaching over a lot of different issues that we deal with.
Now, how can people at home get kind of involved in that program? Is there a website you can refer people to where they can check things out?
No, it's kind of a work in progress, and right now we're just kind of working on some different fundraising opportunities, and possibly a charity event coming up here at the end of the year. Got to see how that works out, but it's kind of something that we do, and the Northern Virginia Community Foundation. They do a great job of kind of helping us find different programs and support them.
Well, that's awesome. Well, if there's anything to help that cause, I know you're going to be sort of championing it. We'll keep an eye out for it. But Chris, I appreciate the time. Good luck Monday night against Seattle. Obviously a tough test, but good luck. Play well, and good luck the rest of the season.
All right, thanks.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, I don't know who that guy in the salmon polo was. We definitely need to have him on more often. He is really good looking.
Yeah, I don't know about that. We'll have to audition some more talent for the show, because I think we can upgrade in that department. At least in the interviewing department. Chris was phenomenal. That was really good stuff.
Yeah, good luck finding more talent than that. Quickly, before we let folks sort of off the hook and not watch this nonsense any longer, this week in the NFL, you called it New England sort of battles the critics. Tom Brady plays well. They go back to the offensive line pairing they had to start the season, and they look like a totally different team against Cincinnati as they have for the last couple of games. Yeah,
they were physical up front, and I think we saw them get Gronkowski going a little bit, and you expect him to play better each week, and he's back from that injury, kind of getting more comfortable. And Brady, once they establish that run game and they start moving the ball and they can get into their tempo stuff, I mean, he's still one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league, and I think people just needed to pump the brakes on the retirement talk, and he's over the hill and all that stuff, because it's awfully hard. Just take a look at some of the quarterbacks around the league from yesterday. It's awfully hard to play the position from your backside. And I think they were able to protect him a little bit better. And you see why you go out and pay Darrelle Revis the money that he did, and you see why he was so valuable to the New York Jets for all those years, because A.J. Green pretty much held. The only time his name was really called, he was being covered by somebody else, or Darrelle Revis, he caught it, and Revis was able to strip the ball away from him. So I think you saw the benefits of having a shutdown corner, like we'll see tonight on the Monday night game in Richard Sherman.
Yeah, no, it's certainly an interesting test. Seattle always or typically seems like they're a totally different team on the road than they do at home. That may be the best home field advantage in all of football in Seattle. They did not look as good as they have at home when they went down to play San Diego. It's going to be a long trip out to Washington. We'll see how they handle that. I'd be remiss if I didn't give your San Diego Chargers continued credit with how well Phillip Rivers is playing, a dismantling of Rex Ryan's defense, 31-0. I'm starting to be a believer. I hate to admit that, and I hate to sort of agree with you in such extreme conditions, but San Diego is the real deal.
They're definitely the real deal, and I think when you have a quarterback that is playing at the level Phillip Rivers is in a quarterback-driven league, and maybe one of the most underrated defenses in the entire National Football League right now, granted, 3 of their 4 wins have come against Blake Bortles as a rookie quarterback, Geno Smith, combination of Geno Smith and Mike Vick there the last couple weeks. So I don't know if we can hail them as the 85 Bears just yet, but I think their defense is playing a lot better. They've been able to kind of stay healthy. They're missing Manti Te'o in the middle there, and they've had corner Sharice Wright miss the game yesterday. But for me right now, I'm just frightened because of that offensive line. They're already without their top 3 running backs now. Donald Brown went out with a concussion yesterday. I love Brandon Oliver. It's a great story. Number 1 running back in the league yesterday as far as fantasy points goes. And I'm sure everybody's scrambling to add him to their rosters. But when you're missing Doug Legorski now, their 3rd center of the season is now looks like he's going to be done for the year. They had to move rookie Chris Watt from Notre Dame from guard, who was only part-time playing guard, now to center. Took his first snaps of his life at center yesterday. I just feel like the clock's ticking, and if they can't protect the golden goose there in Phillip, they really have nothing else offensively to show for it. It's great to have all the weapons at receiver, but like we've seen time and time again, if you don't have the trigger man, you really don't have anything.
Yeah, no, I think we're starting to see some trends sort of unfold. San Francisco avoids sort of another disappointing loss in sort of a late game, sort of bringing that together against Kansas City. New York Giants and the Buffalo Bills are sort of surprising people week in and week out with wins that nobody really gives them credit for or a chance at before the game starts. I think it's just interesting, and it just goes to the parity of the NFL, and I think I'm excited to see things unfold. Wanted to give a quick shout-out to Oakley. I hope I wasn't too subtle with the stuff that they sent me this week for the show. I don't think I was. Always great to have you on, Kevin. Hope your care package from Oakley gets there in the mail sooner than later. And excited to have people join us next week, Monday, normal 2 o'clock time, for another week of Football in Focus.
Oakley, I didn't know. I didn't know they were a sponsor, Ryan.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to kind of decipher between the hat and the sunglasses and the chapstick and the shirt and the watch and the wristband. Now I just saw as well multiple glasses. You know what? I think my care package might have arrived to your house, and you might be wearing most of it. Looks like it fits well. Why don't you go ahead and keep it, Ryan?
That sounds great. I appreciate that generosity as usual. I hope we have you on next week. If the baby arrives early, then we'll find a replacement. Shouldn't be too difficult.
I've already checked with Scripps La Jolla Hospital. Their Wi-Fi network is extremely strong, so both Leah and the baby will have to understand.
I'm sure they'll be thrilled. Appreciate it.
Perfect, and I'm looking forward to watching 360 Sports client Chris Chesser. That was a great interview you did. I know we had some audio-video difficulties, but great stuff by you and also by Chris. Hunter's start tonight. Looking forward to it. I don't know how many Monday Night Footballs I've watched in a row, but I don't think it's 100. But when I get to that number, maybe we can celebrate that as well.
Yeah, no, we'll have you a party, and I think we'll get you another trophy, just like that fake golf trophy you had back there.
You mean that one? Third place at the Aztec Invitational. Maybe
Yeah.
second place this year if we can actually have our ringer show up from Oakley.
Thanks, guys.
See you, man.